The person that we are about to interview, I call him the Einstein of our time.
Yes.
We absolutely love talking to him. He's an Indian American political commentator, author, and filmmaker. He's best known for his 2016 film, Hillary's America. Please welcome to the show, Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh D'Souza, thank you for being on the show.
It's a pleasure. Good to join you guys.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness. So we know that the book is out, The United States of Socialism. Please talk about it. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Socialism is the end goal of what the left is up to. We see all this craziness around us, perpetual lockdowns and knocking down statues. And you might wonder, well, what's the point? Trump suggests that the point is anarchy, just to sort of dismantle the structure of the laws, but I think it's actually deeper than that. There is some place that these guys want to take us. They want to transform our country, but in what direction? Well, the answer is they want to transform it toward greater state control. Not just state control over the economy. That's always one part of socialism. And that's the part most people know, economic confiscation. But the other part of it is control of your life. What you can think, what you can say, your faith and how you practice it, how your movements, your privacy. Ultimately, socialist countries always go after those things also. So it's an attack both on our earnings and our wealth, but it's also an attack on our civil liberties. But the real goal of the left is to control the Congress and the presidency and the Supreme Court. And of course, they already dominate the media and Hollywood and academia. So this would then create, you may say, a stranglehold on the American economy and the American culture. So ultimately, they don't want a diversity of states all pursuing different policies. They want to impose a national uniformity on the entire country. That's the United States of socialism. What's interesting is if you think about the right, the conservatives, we are in a way disorganized. So for example, the conservatives in America have no contact with, let's say, conservatives in South America or in Australia or in Europe. We operate in a sense locally within our own country. But the left isn't like that. George Soros, for example, has his paws in Hungary and in Europe and in Australia and in Canada and in the United States. So the left thinks in that sense globally. The climate change movement is not local to America. It's a global movement, and these people collaborate with each other. When the George Floyd killing occurred in America, you might think, wow, this is something happening on an American street. Why would they care about it in, let's say, Paris or London? But massive demonstrations in Paris, massive demonstrations in London. This is the international left working in coordination against Trump and the conservatives in America. You know, at one point, Obama said something very revealing. This was an interview with the New York Times, and they kind of buried it, but it was, Obama said something like, I envy the government of China, because in China, you don't have to seek a democratic referendum on doing things. You just do them. And all socialists love ultimately the idea that they can issue the order. No one else gets to say no. So even though people, in a sense, will complain about Chinese communism and so on, there's a certain envy of the ability of a small group of people to dictate the lives of a billion people, 1 out of 7 people on the entire planet. I think that's what the left would like to achieve. Now, they know they're not going to get that kind of authoritarian socialism here. So they're going to try to do it, as they say, democratically. But when they say democratic socialism and they talk about the people, they don't really mean the people. When Elizabeth Warren says, you know, we got to take the healthcare system away from the insurance companies and give it to the people. Well, I mean, guys, do you or I have any control over the post office or the DMV? No. We don't control these public institutions. They are controlled by the politicians. So when the politicians say the people, they actually mean themselves.
Now, we know that you have this movie coming out called The Trump Card. Tell us a little bit about the movie.
There's one man, like a colossus, dominating this debate, and that's Trump. And ultimately, if we're going to defeat the socialist left, we need a general. We need a leader who's going to sort of lead the charge, and that's Trump. And he's the perfect general because for most of his life, what was he? A builder, an entrepreneur, a capitalist. So his life, even before the presidency, was the embodiment of the opposite of socialism, which is free market capitalism. Trump proved that he could do what Obama said could not be done, which is he jump-started the economy big time. And they couldn't deny it. That's the one thing they could not deny. So it was almost as if the virus was a political godsend because it shut the economy down. And so the left basically says, listen, why don't we just keep we can wrestle the economy to the ground till November. Now, I assure you, if Biden wins the election, the day after the election, there will be a deafening media roar to reopen the economy. It's, oh yes, this has been a traumatic experience, but it's time now to, so they will have achieved their political objective of defeating Trump. The last thing they want is for Trump to show that he can do it again. Because if he did it again, think about it. I mean, Obama can't pop out like a jack in the box and go, I did it, because this time it's really obvious it was Trump and Trump alone. So that's the political objective. But I think the deeper objective is that the Democrats have sort of realized, listen, what about if we habituate people to sitting on the couch? I mean, there are a lot of people who would, there's a little part in all of us that likes to sit on the couch, right? So when the Democrats will say, listen, why do you want to go back to work? You got to put on a clean shirt and shave and punch a time clock and listen to your boss rave on and on. How about if we give you $2,000 to kind of keep doing that? So what's happening here is the left is using coronavirus to habituate people, to get them used to doing nothing, so that the Democratic agenda of creating dependency, essentially they're trying to take what they've done to American Indians, to African Americans, to blacks, and do it to the whole country. Make us all into dependents so that they will control our lives.
You're so right. Dinesh, okay, so go ahead.
Well, I wanted to ask him, when is the movie due to come out?
Right.
So the movie opens nationwide on August 7th.
All right.
And Dinesh, I understand that you have a little teaser for us, right?
Yes, we've released a short 1 minute or 1.5 minute teaser that just gives you a little window into the film.
So let's go ahead and take a look at that right now.
Take a look.
A Tampa Bay pastor has been arrested for violating coronavirus social distancing rules.
We will shut you down, we will arrest you, and we will take you to jail. Period.
Safety groups are turning to drones to monitor public spaces.
I'm starting to feel like I'm in a communist country.
Protests turned destructive in downtown Seattle tonight.
There are certainly aspects of them that are true to a cause. That is a good cause.
It says it right in the name, Antifa, anti-fascism.
I went to the big guys for the money. I was ready to prostitute myself.
The Bidens have done very well, and Joe Biden's been very sophisticated and shrewd in the way he's done it. He's essentially offshored the corruption.
I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired.
We have to say yes to socialism, to the word and everything.
We are living in many ways in a socialist society right now.
Only in America, when the president tweets about liberation, does he mean go back to work. I think a lot of people should just say no.
Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain.
The next moment I looking down, my hands are being put in handcuffs, my ankles are shacked.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country.
He understands that what's at stake is the American dream itself.
The best is yet to come. Thank you.
All right. One question. So we know that you mentioned something about Indians and about African Americans, and we know that there's a movement called Black Lives Matter. And we know that after the death of George Floyd, there was a lot of planned, organized protests going on out there in the streets, which turned into chaos and riots and all of that. Please tell me, what do you think about the movement or the organization Black Lives Matter?
if you look at the agenda of Black Lives Matter, they're actually pretty clear about it. It's a socialist agenda. And so Black Lives Matter is the means to get us there. Now, it's important to realize that for Marx thought that the revolution would come from the working class. Marx basically focused on like the union guy that he thought was being paid too little, who would ultimately can't take it anymore, and he would lead a revolution. But notice that that's never happened. No union guys or no workers have led a revolution in any country in the whole world from Marx's day to today. So the left in America has realized if you're going to get socialism, you can't tap the class warfare or class grievance. That's not enough. You need the racial grievance because it's deeper. It runs more in the veins of American history. So they took the George Floyd killing. And by the way, if you look across the spectrum, there was a uniform denunciation of that officer in George Floyd. So it was actually an opportunity for reconciliation, for us to go forward in a kind of nonpartisan way. We've got these bad cops. Let's make sure we only have good cops. But see, for the left, that was a problem. They were like, we don't want that. What do we want? We want to drive a wedge. And we drive a wedge by saying not that we need good cops, but that all cops are bad. That the cops are inherently racist and they're part of a racist structure. And that's America. And the flag is part of that. And so is the national anthem. And so is Abraham Lincoln. Wow. So their idea was to force this larger narrative down our throat on the pain that if we don't accept it, we're against Black Lives Matter. We don't care about George Floyd. So that's the bogus sleight of hand that they've been trying to force feed us ever since George Floyd. Yeah. Notice, by the way, they don't teach people like Frederick Douglass. Why? Because he didn't buy into this nonsense. Ultimately, Frederick Douglass's speech was called the self-made man. And it was all about the idea about how we are responsible for our own lives and we are the authors of our own destiny. So the left hates that. And so the most famous black American of our history, the most important figure, an abolitionist, a runaway slave, they knocked down his statue in Rochester, New York. Wow. So it gives you an idea of how insidious these people are and how effective they have been in using these engines of indoctrination. The third, of course, is the national media, which you know a lot about.
Wow. Wow. What do you want people to take away from this movie, Trump Card?
The movie does what it reaches people in a way a book can't, because there are people who come in line to see a movie who won't stand in line to get a signed book at Barnes & Noble. It's just a wider audience, and of course our culture has moved toward the visual. So movies are very powerful and can do something very important. Now the problem we face is very simple. We've made a great movie, but the national media will ignore it. CNN will say nothing about it. They won't attack it, but they will pretend it doesn't exist. Same with ABC. I won't be on The View. I won't be on Bill Maher. So they will, in a sense, boycott the movie. Why? Because they know how dangerous it is. They know that if millions of Americans saw this movie, Biden would be sunk. The Democratic left would be finished. So my challenge is, how do I take this movie and get it to 100 million people so people can see it? Because I'm convinced if they see it, they would be like, wow, I've been lied to. There's so much I don't know. I've never heard this side of the story. Young people would go, wow, my professors never told me that. They can't refute it, but they just leave it out of the curriculum and out of the classroom. Why? Because it doesn't fit their narrative.
The movie is going to be in theaters August the 7th. Trump Card. So make sure you all get out and see it.
Yes.
And the book, you all, The United States of Socialism. Make sure you get the book so that you can read it.